All right. Welcome back. You're watching Liquid Lunch on Biz TV. I'm John Tobacco. We're coming to you live as we do every single day, noon to 2 Eastern. So much to break down, so much to get into. But one of the foremost experts in breaking down all the crazy things happening in the swamp joins me right now. Barr is the president of the Law Enforcement Education Foundation, former congressman, former CIA intelligence analyst, one of the best in the business. And Mr. Barr, you've seen it all over the years. I know many are saying this is a national embarrassment, what we saw on stage the other night. I kind of tend to agree with it.
In a sense, it was embarrassing, but in a more important sense, John, what got lost in having a really bad and biased moderator and the talking back and forth and interrupting between the two candidates, what got lost was some real substance. And I'm afraid that not only got lost, but people don't really realize some of the things that Biden said or didn't say. And I think it bears repeating because these are very important issues for the election coming up in 1 month.
No question about it. I have been using this analogy, you know, some junior high school science class, signal and noise, right? And if you watch the debate with the optics and the visuals, you take in all that noise. And if you listen to it, and I listened to it again and again with no video, your point is right on. There was plenty of noise, but the signal that Joe Biden sent out clearly was he lied about, he said that it wasn't true his son got $3.5 million from Moscow, when we know it's true. He would not say law enforcement. He said clearly, I am going to eliminate the tax cuts, which is a slick way of saying I'm raising your taxes. He also said Antifa is not an organization, it's an idea. And just for the Bernie supporters out there who made this tepid agreement with Biden, he pointed out, although his running mate is the primary co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, he's not for the Green New Deal. To me, those were the signal takeaways I got.
And those are all very important issues. If there is, for example, John, one issue on which the American people ought to vote against Joe Biden for president is because this is a man who will not condemn Antifa and what they are doing to law enforcement and to the civil institutions of our government. He could not bring himself to condemn Antifa, nor could he bring himself to say, I am a supporter of law enforcement. That alone should disqualify him from being president of the United States.
No question. And when I watch the, the maniacs on the mainstream media, they keep pounding this point. Trump wouldn't denounce white supremacists. But if you watch the tape again, when Chris Wallace asked him the question, he started his sentence, will you denounce white supremacy? He said, of course I do. Okay, and then they try to push him on, this one fringe group, the Proud Boys, who has nothing to do with racism. By the way, one of its founders is an African-American guy. They're pushing him on Proud Boys. Everyone forgets he said, of course I do. And then they just snip at the rest. But Joe Biden, they let off the hook when he says Antifa is an idea. It's not an idea. There are chapters all across this country.
Antifa is very real. And anybody who thinks that Antifa is not real ought to go out and let themselves get hit on the head with a baseball bat or a trash can in one of these riots in which Antifa not only participates but helps organize. And the question that was posed, for example, John, as you just pointed out, to President Trump with regard to denouncing white supremacists, of course, the question itself was preceded with Chris Wallace going on and on with an underlying presumption in the question that President Trump supports white supremacist violent groups and therefore now take this opportunity, Mr. President, to denounce them. It was a shameful example of a very biased so-called moderator. He doesn't even deserve the characterization of being a moderator.
Yeah.
He was, in fact, an anti-Trump, activists.
100%. And I know you're one of the finest in the business when it comes to understanding the law and law enforcement and all this other stuff. But even your point, it's so on the money. Chris Wallace launched into this soliloquy about how Trump said there are good people on both sides of the aisle. Again, they rely on a false predicate because they only use they take them out of context on the good people on both sides of the aisle. So Chris Wallace validates the false predicate, the North Carolina thing, and then uses that to basically launch an attack on him. That's the way I see it.
He does. It's very similar. Reminded me, John, of some of the Democrats in the House of Representatives on the Judiciary Committee that I worked with while I was in the Congress. For example, one of the members of the Judiciary Committee at the time, who's still there, by the way, Sheila Jackson Lee from a district in Texas, whenever we had a hearing, she would, and each of us had 5 minutes. So she would take 4 minutes and 45 seconds to provide the soliloquy of what she wanted to say, and then at the very end, pose a 3 or 4 word sentence. But she used her chance, her opportunity, her 5 minutes to state what her position is. That's exactly what Chris Wallace was doing, and it's, again, shameful that he was allowed to do that. And I do hope that in the next 2 debates, we see some degree of more objective moderators, and I really hope that they don't start this business of cutting off the microphones for the candidates. That is would be a true disservice to the American people and to the candidates.
You know, I never agreed for most of the time with Chris Wallace's dad. But what happened to the days of the great reporters like Walter Cronkite and didn't think they were there to opine on things, but they were there to give a good objective overview for what was happening? What happened to those days?
I think part of it is simply the whole way that news, and I put news in quotes, is presented is very different in the internet age, John. Even with just cable news, where you have 24/7 news, you don't have people like Walter Cronkite, and I didn't always agree with some of his opinions, but
agreed.
There was at least a requirement back in those days when you had half-hour or hour news segments as opposed to 24/7, so that there would be a conscious effort on the part of the networks and the news anchors to provide a meaningful presentation of real news as opposed to just babbling incessantly and opining incessantly, which is basically what we have now on so-called news channels.
Absolutely. We're down to our final minute here, but I did want to get your take on this. Senate finally passes a stopgap spending measure, continuing resolution, $1.4 trillion in government funding. What do you think about that?
I tell you, these trillion-dollar packages are going to kill us in just a few years. I mean, when I was in the House, billions of dollars were important, and we argued over that. Nowadays, $1 trillion, $1.4 trillion is nothing. They just pass this stuff like it has no meaning, and it's going to come a cropper pretty darn soon for our country.
No doubt about it. Unfortunately, I love Trump, but fiscal conservatism went out the window a while ago, and nobody's ever looking at this imaginary printing press we have. But at least the Democrats were looking for $6 trillion when it started, so we got some sanity in there, and I hope it helps a bunch of people in America.
You're right. You got to look at a silver lining there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Mr. Barr, thank you so much for joining us as usual. We're going to take a quick break right here. Be back on the other side with some news of the day just for you.